When duty became destiny, the rain hammered against the windshield like bullets as officers Maya Chen and Sarah Rodriguez pulled their patrol car into the dark alley behind the abandoned warehouse. It was 3 a.m, and the dispatch call had been frantic, a teenage girl's voice, barely audible over screaming in the background, giving this location before the line went dead. Maya's hands gripped the steering wheel so tight her knuckles turned white. While Sarah was already checking her service weapon, her jaw set in that determined way that Maya had come to recognize over their 6 months as partners. Neither of them knew that in the next few hours, their lives would transform in ways that had nothing to do with the badge they wore and everything to do with the hearts they had. Carefully guarded for so long, they found her huddled behind a dumpster. A 16-year-old girl named Elena, her clothes torn and her face swollen from fresh bruises that made Maya's stomach turn. The girl was shaking so violently that at first they thought she was having a seizure, but it was pure terror. Her stepfather and his friends had brought her here, she managed to whisper through broken sobs, for reasons that made both officers exchange a look of shared rage and heartbreak. Sarah immediately draped her jacket over Elena's shoulders while Maya called for backup in an ambulance. But what happened next was something neither officer had been trained for in the academy. Elena grabbed Sarah's hand with surprising strength and begged them not to leave her, not even for a second, because she was certain her stepfather would come back to finish what he started. In that moment, both Maya and Sarah made a silent vow that this girl would not face another second of fear alone. The investigation that followed consumed their lives for weeks. Maya and Sarah took turns staying with Elena at the hospital, then at the emergency foster home even on their days off. They documented every injury, tracked down every witness, and built a case so airtight that the district attorney called it one of the most thorough reports she had ever seen. But somewhere between the late-night stakeouts and the early morning court preparations, something else was building, something neither of them had words for at first. Maya found herself watching the way Sarah's entire face softened when she talked to Elena, how she never rushed the girl's tears or tried to minimize her pain. Sarah noticed how Maya would stay up until dawn reading books on trauma recovery, determined to understand what Elena needed even though it was not part of their job description. They started meeting for coffee before their shifts to discuss the case. But the conversations would drift into their own lives, their own fears, their own dreams they had set aside when they put on the uniform. Maya had known she was gay since she was 14, but in a family of strict Chinese immigrants where marriage and grandchildren were not suggestions but expectations, she had learned to compartmentalize her identity into a box she only opened in private moments. The police force had been her escape, a place where she could be strong and capable and needed, where no one asked about her dating life, because everyone was too focused on surviving the job. Sarah's story was different but equally lonely. Raised in a deeply Catholic Puerto Rican family, she had dated men for years, convinced that the emptiness she felt was normal, that marriage was about partnership and duty rather than passion. She had joined the force after a painful divorce, trying to prove to herself that she could be more than someone's disappointing wife. Neither had planned to fall in love, especially not with each other, especially not in the middle of the most demanding case of their careers. The night it happened was ordinary in every way except the ones that mattered. They were parked outside the courthouse at 11 p.m., finishing paperwork before Elena's stepfather's arraignment the next morning. Sarah had brought coffee and those chocolate donuts. Maya pretended not to love but always ate, and they were talking about Elena's progress in therapy when Sarah said something that made Maya laugh, really laugh, the kind that comes from somewhere deep and unguarded. Sarah turned to look at her, and in the dim glow of the streetlight, Maya saw something in her partner's eyes that made her forget how to breathe. It was the look of someone seeing you, really seeing you, in all the ways you had convinced yourself were invisible. Before she could think or doubt or retreat into safety, Maya leaned across the console and kissed Sarah, soft and tentative and terrified. For one horrible second, Sarah went completely still, and Maya's heart shattered into pieces. But then Sarah's hand came up to cup Maya's face, and she was kissing her back with an intensity that spoke of years of hunger. Neither had acknowledged, and suddenly the tiny patrol car became the entire world. What followed was not the romantic montage of movie love stories, but the messy, complicated reality of two people trying to navigate feelings in a profession that still whispered and judged, in families that would not understand, in a society that had opinions about who deserved to love whom. They kept their relationship private at first, meeting in secret, learning each other in stolen moments between shifts. Maya would trace the scar on Sarah's shoulder from a domestic violence call gone wrong and feel her heart crack open with tenderness. Sarah would wake up before dawn just to watch Maya sleep, memorizing the peaceful expression so different from the careful mask she wore at work. They talked for hours about everything and nothing: Sarah's fear that she had wasted her 20s on a marriage that never felt right, Maya's guilt about lying to her parents, who still called weekly to ask if she had met a nice man. They argued sometimes, fierce and passionate, because both were used to being in control and neither knew how to be vulnerable. But they always came back to each other, always found their way through the fear to the truth underneath. That what they had found was rare and precious and worth fighting for. Elena was the first to figure it out, with the intuition of someone who had learned to read people for survival. 6 months after her rescue, at her therapist's office where Maya and Sarah still came to every appointment as her chosen family, she looked at both of them and asked with a small smile when they were going to admit they were in love. Both officers had gone bright red, stumbling over denials that convinced no one, least of all the perceptive teenager watching them. But instead of judgment, Elena's eyes held something that looked like hope. She told them about a teacher at school, Miss Patterson, who had a photo of her wife on her desk and talked about her with this light in her eyes, and how seeing that had made Elena believe that maybe love could be something beautiful instead of terrifying. She said that watching Maya and Sarah, the way they protected each other and believed in each other and made each other better, had shown her what real partnership looked like. And it was the first time she had seen that modeled by people she trusted. In trying to save Elena, Maya and Sarah had somehow given her something to believe in, and in return, she had given them permission to believe in themselves. Coming out was not a single moment, but a series of small, brave choices. Sarah told her mother first over Sunday dinner, her hands shaking as she spoke the truth she had hidden for 32 years. Her mother cried, not with disappointment but with sadness, for all the years her daughter had spent hiding, and then she asked to meet Maya because any woman who made her Sarah smile like that deserved to be welcomed into their family. Maya's conversation with her parents was harder. They hung up on her twice before finally agreeing to meet Sarah, and the dinner was stiff and silent with disapproval radiating from every corner. But Maya held Sarah's hand under the table and refused to apologize for her happiness. And slowly, painfully, over months and years, her parents began to soften. At work, they were professional, never crossing boundaries on duty, but word got around anyway because it always does. Some colleagues were supportive, others distant, a few openly hostile, but Maya and Sarah faced it together, united by something stronger than approval or acceptance. 2 years after that rainy night in the alley, they stood in a small courthouse, with Elena and a handful of close friends and family, exchanging vows that made even the stern judge wipe away a tear. Elena, now 18 and thriving in college, read a poem she had written about finding light in darkness, about the 2 officers who had saved her life, and then taught her what love could be when it was built on respect and equality and genuine care. Sarah's mother sobbed through the entire ceremony while Maya's parents sat stiffly in the back row. But when it came time for family photos, Maya's father stepped forward and asked, through her mother's translation, if he could take a picture with both his daughter and her wife. It was not everything Maya had dreamed of, but it was a beginning, and sometimes beginnings are enough. The story of Maya and Sarah is not about perfection or easy answers. It is about 2 people who met in the darkness of someone else's trauma and found in each other the courage to step into their own light. It is about choosing love even when that choice comes with consequences. About building family from friendship and trust rather than blood and obligation. It is about showing up day after day for the person who sees you at your worst and loves you anyway, who challenges you to be braver and kinder and more honest than you ever thought possible. It is about 2 police officers who saved a girl and in doing so saved themselves, who learned that the most important protection they could offer was not from danger but from loneliness, from the lie that they had to hide who they were to deserve love. If this story touched your heart in any way, if it reminded you that love comes in many forms and all of them are valid, if it made you believe even for a moment that courage and compassion can change lives, please take a second to like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Stories like Maya's and Sarah's deserve to be told, and your engagement helps these narratives of hope and authentic love reach the people who need them most. Maya still patrols those same streets, and Sarah still sits beside her in the patrol car, but now they go home to each other at the end of every shift. They attend Elena's college, graduation, and watch her accept an award for her volunteer work with at-risk youth, and they know that the ripples of that one night continue to spread in ways they will never fully understand. On their anniversary each year, they return to that alley, now cleaned up and painted with a community mural, and they stand in the spot where everything changed. Sarah always jokes that it was the least romantic place in the world to fall in love, and Maya always responds that it was perfect because it was real. And in the end, reality, messy and complicated and beautiful and true, is always better than any fairy tale. Before we close this chapter, I want to ask you something from the heart. If you believe in kindness, in the power of love to transform lives, in the importance of telling stories that show different kinds of families and relationships, please leave a comment below sharing your thoughts or even just a heart emoji. Let us build a community of people who believe that everyone deserves to love and be loved exactly as they are. The truth is, we all carry pieces of Maya and Sarah within us. The fear of judgment, the longing to be seen, the hope that somewhere out there is a person who will choose us not despite our truth but because of it. Their story reminds us that sometimes the most heroic thing we can do is not to save others but to allow ourselves to be saved, to open our carefully guarded hearts and trust that love, in whatever form it takes, is always worth the risk.